So welcome everybody. I am Nancy Hoffman. I'm a senior advisor at JFF, and I am thrilled to be able to host this session with some old friends and some new ones. And I am not going to spend a lot of time talking to you because they're really important things to discuss, and we're just going to get started. If you, there are some seats up front, so if you don't want to stand, we won't watch you as you walk up and take the front seats.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. Give Nancy a hand. So, Nancy's, how long have you been at JFF? Like 25 years?
22 years.
So,
Something like that.
one of the cool things about this community is
Too old to get another job.
Nancy has, is one of the leaders in work-based learning in America. One of your favorite pubs that you wrote was Gold Standard, where I think you and Bob, as much as anybody in America, introduced apprenticeships and studied the Gold Standard in Switzerland and sort of brought that knowledge to the United States. And it's interesting, Nancy, that I know, but I'm just saying it's really interesting. That work was 10 years ago. I started 20 years ago, and I think we're seeing today real momentum around apprenticeships in many different fields, and it's in large part because of so much of the work that you did. So Pathways work.
Our first funder. He was the funder of early college from the Gates Foundation. I was the first person to lead this work. And it's been the most successful small schools initiative, has had major impact, and it's all because of Tom.
All right, welcome to, this is a Pathways session. We're going to explore new momentum in Pathways, high school to career pathways. Come on in and really feel free to come up here. There's a couple of seats all the way over there. Feel free to wander around. There's lots of reasons for that this topic is so important right now. I want to give a big shout out to ASA, Judy and the whole ASA team that are here that helped organize not only this session but this conference. And Judy, your survey work has been so important in sort of laying the groundwork for this conference and this session. You did some recent surveys that suggested 2/3 of middle and high school students just don't feel like they're getting anywhere near the amount of guidance that they need. Kids that have just graduated from high school almost all say, we could have used a lot more support and guidance, a lot earlier career exploration. And in the last 6 months, I think we, as a species, have gone through a new step function change where we've entered what I think of as a new age of human-computer interface. I think we've probably ended the computer age or the information age, and we're in this new age of human-computer interface where even the way we think about ourselves as professionals and our own agency and identity of what we're capable of is now undergoing fundamental change. And I think that is going to require new ways to think about pathways, both from high school through to college. And I think you're here because you're involved in helping to create that. So we're going to do two things, 2 cycles with an extraordinary panel where we're going to explore what's happening in pathways right now, and then we'll come back to that question of how is AI and exponential technology further accelerating that or changing the nature of that work. You guys probably know these panelists. They're well introduced in our app, and so I'm not going to do extensive introduction, but I want to start with Dr. Amy Lloyd from the department. I think of her as our national pathways queen. She is really leading. The department is really serious about pathways and made that central to their agenda, in large part because of Amy and Roberto's leadership. We had the opportunity to hear him at breakfast. If you guys want to come in, there's even more room over there. Feel free to wander in while we're talking. Don't don't mind us up here. Amy, why has the department made Pathways central? And in about 3 minutes, what does that mean to you?
3 minutes, Tom.
Or
So I could talk with you all day about why pathways matter and why this is our grounding for how we want to transform the educational experience for young people and blur the lines, as my dear colleague Roberta said this morning, between secondary and post-secondary and the world of work. So we know that, we as a nation have some of the best educational practices, and yet we know that they're still deeply inequitable. And the pandemic shone a light on some of these inequities and widened and deepened them. But frankly, regardless of what students' vision for their post-secondary trajectory may be, all students are headed to a career. And we need to start much earlier to support every single young person to start to consider their possible futures, to start to connect more to community, to engage in learning beyond classroom walls that's intergenerational, to connect to careers and have real-world hands-on work-based learning experiences. And so I joined the administration because the Biden-Harris platform is all about building the middle class from the ground up and the middle out, and also all about blurring the lines and connecting the interdependence between education, workforce development, and economic development. And that's my jam. I'm all in on that. So when Secretary Cardona said, all right, what I want to do as one of my core priorities is center the work of career and technical education, the work of career-connected education more broadly, as the core principle for reimagining our high school experience. I was jumping into the deep end with abandon, because that is what we need to do at scale for our young people. We shouldn't just have a handful of great programs here and there serving some young people in some places. We need to make sure that every young person, regardless of, so much of our outcomes are still predicted by demography, right? Like zip code, race, gender. We need to do away with demography determining destiny and ensure that every single young person is receiving career supports whilst in secondary, middle grades, and high school to make informed choices with their families about what next steps they want to take. And we also need to ensure that one of the things I love about Secretary Cardona's vision here is he's really challenging our either-or mentality that my colleague Roberta spoke to this morning about college or career, pushing on a both and. We know that jobs today and into the future will require some form of post-secondary credentials. I'd love to talk about skills versus credentials some too. But he knows that four-year college is a great pathway for some, it's not for everyone. And that pathways should have multiple on-ramps and off-ramps over a student's lifetime. And so his vision, my vision that we share is that every young person will graduate high school with 4 keys to unlock their career success, and we're reimagining our work around that.
And those are?
Those are dual enrollment, so real world kind of college credit earned in high school, work-based learning, real world hands-on applied learning in workplace contexts, an industry credential that's sought by employers, not one of the million that's recognized, but one that employers are actually using as a proxy for the skills that they want, and they're putting on job descriptions so students can broker their skills with confidence in the labor market. And finally, career and post-secondary advising, navigation, supports over the trajectory of a student's time in both P12 and post-secondary. And while that's easy to say, it's often one of the weakest links in our system. So how are we supporting students and their families to have the information they need to exercise self-determination about their futures? And all of this is reverse engineered from the Investing in America, millions of jobs coming down the pike, and thinking about how are we really preparing our young people in our workforce to respond to the economic shifts that we're in. So it's this wonderful confluence of workforce, economic development, and education really coming together in a new and innovative way that's student-centered, that connects to community, and that helps young people have bright, powerful, rewarding futures that, with no dead ends, no wrong doors, and allow them to really continue to pursue lifelong education.
If you want more room, feel free while we're talking, wander in here. There's a little bit more over here. We've probably reached a fire code violation already, but I appreciate you. That is, there's one more seat over here.
Tom's got a seat up here.
And there's one up here.
Next one in is that chair.
That's an awesome framework, and Judy, it's very similar to your work. You've been like the national champ for starting in the middle grades and career exploration for all students. I love the idea of all students' work experience. This is not a CTE issue. This is all students deserve career exploration. It has to start in the middle grades.
And I will say over half of our high school students are engaged in CTE, but this is more than CTE.
Yeah.
It's career for all, absolutely. From an equity perspective, we have to get real about that.
Our second guest is Jason Tisco from the U.S. Chamber Foundation. Jason, I don't think I've ever told you this, but 40 years ago I was a business exec in Denver, and it was the Denver Chamber and that allowed me to lead their education efforts that really changed my life. And advocating for businesses to get involved in education is super important to me, and so I love the work that you're doing. We all really appreciate the Chamber's engagement. And Jason, in the last 2 years, you've come to this really interesting conclusion that we want chambers, and the U.S. Chamber in particular, to help more kids engage in client-connected projects or industry-identified challenges. That's such an interesting insight, and I think you and I are probably among the two geekiest guys in the country, really interested in client-connected projects and why they're so important. But tell us how you came to that conclusion, and then a little bit about how you're beginning to launch EPIC nationally. So why are client projects so important?
Yeah, and the Corey's definitely in the geeky crowd about project.
This is Corey from the Caps.
There are many of us.
I've never been introduced that way. That's awesome.
100 affiliates around the country doing professions-based learning, right? So you're another one. Steve, from Da Vinci is geeking out on client-connected projects at Da Vinci. So we have a lot of your people here, but why
We're a movement and it's growing.
Yes.
So for those of you who might not be familiar, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the world's largest business federation. We have a network of over 1,500 state and local chambers of commerce. We collectively reach over 3 million firms, the majority of which are small to mid-sized enterprises. And we have a global network of American chambers of commerce. So as we've been approaching this issue, we've really been trying to solve what I often describe as infrastructure problems. And we're in an unstructured labor market. And part of the reason why I transitioned over 10 years ago from state government to the U.S. Chamber was to really try to solve these workforce challenges from the business side of the equation. And the idea was, when I came up in government, the assumption was it's a collective action problem. And somebody needs to go out and organize business because they will not organize themselves, they will not share primary source proprietary information, so on and so forth. You probably heard this yourself. Well, I'm here to say it's not true. If employers are given the space, incentives, infrastructure, and networks to lead, they will share primary source information, and it will result in pathways with a purpose that actually lead to high impact careers. So as we've been building this out, we often wrap it up in the language of talent supply chain management. We built an entire change management framework to help employers better orchestrate these pipelines with preferred education and training partners. So as we've been facilitating this change management across the country, and I see many of our partners here who are involved in that movement, including our partners in San Antonio, who are here today. As we've been doing that, we've been starting to now dig deeper into the pedagogy of learning. And one of the things that has long stood out to us is the impact of project-based learning and when it's done authentically. So it's not a silver bullet, but we were thinking from the talent supply chain point of view, how do you begin integrating more employer connections through project-based learning, making sure employers are actually deeply involved in the design and the assessment of those challenges, and to use them as performance assessments. Whether it's to get people kind of more into the pipeline through career awareness and exploration, through solving real-world messy problems, or to assess them on their readiness for a place-based experience or employment itself. But we didn't invent project-based learning. But what we're trying to invent is the infrastructure to scale it. So we recently partnered with ASA to launch a program this year that we'll be piloting to try to create a national, if not global, infrastructure that can really scale authentic project-based learning with employers. So the idea there is, how do you create, coming back to my education days, if I were to flip it, every school's got to go out there and find those employer partners, convince them this is a high impact practice and what's in it for them. They've got to build that relationship, launch that challenge, try to get them to do it again. And it's often very kind of boutique, it's very hard to scale, and it often doesn't reach the learners or the communities that are going to benefit the most from it.
Let me put a pause on that. Nancy, this is like a uniquely American thing, isn't it? That in Europe you don't see these client-connected projects. Is this sort of a new form of work-based learning?
It's I would say a new form, but nowhere as good as what they do in Switzerland. There 70% of kids at 15 sign a contract with an employer, go to school 2 days a week, work 2 days a week, and 1 day a week are in an industry association learning about the industry.
Yeah.
And they're much nicer to their parents after that.
But Jason, the cool thing is that this is a neat way for young people to try on possible futures, as our friends in Cajon Valley would say, right? And so this is a more dynamic model than apprenticeship, and it's like a pre-apprenticeship in that you can dive into a problem, try to deliver value for a customer group, and then reflect on, do I see myself in that future? And you could cycle through a number of these as part of a pathway, right?
I would say this again, it's infrastructure. So what we're
Yeah.
trying to create is a network where they have shared services, a shared quality standard, a shared credential where any business association can plug in and provide project-based learning as a service to both the education and workforce partners in the community, but to the employers that are going to be architects of the challenges.
Underscore that's a very cool idea. PBL as a service is a new way to think about this. It's going to soon be a national infrastructure with nodes around these business associations, right?
So think of this goal. What if in a couple of years' time we come back and say we now have 100 business associations part of this network offering over 1,000 challenges reaching over 10,000 members. It's going to be quite a lift to get 10,000 internships or 10,000 apprenticeships. We should do those things. But it's all hands on deck, and we need to support multiple pathways and agile learning strategies. And we think project-based learning needs to be part of the mix, but it's high impact, but often the hardest to do in scale. And that's where we're trying to lean in on the business community side to say, we need to do our part to creating an infrastructure that the education folks can plug into.
One of the cool things back to Kansas City, in part because of the beginning of CAPS, but do you guys know my colleague Shani?
Hello, everyone.
Kansas City is, I introduced Shani because she's my partner, but she's also ran CTE in KCPS. That whole region is now committed to helping every kid have a client-connected project and internship and entrepreneurial experience. So I think it's the best current regional example of trying to do what you just described as a new way to think about pathways, potentially including community connected or client connected projects. Dana, welcome. So Dana Brinson's from North Carolina. It's a group called Spark NC, and it's one of the most interesting district collaboratives that I've seen in the last couple of years. It's 16 districts that are working together to collaboratively and creatively implement 8 different high-tech pathways. So these are districts all over North Carolina. They include a bunch of very small, rural, remote districts. So think about the challenge of tiny districts trying to stand up game-based learning, esports, a machine learning pathway. So how are you helping districts do that?
I just have to say, I'm in awe of you being like an embodied LinkedIn Tom. I'm glad to be a part of your network. So Spark NC is a new way to do school. It is competency-based, and it employs modular, stackable learning experiences that students choose their own adventure through.
Think about that. It's modular, stackable. So these are courses that they break down into 3 modules. And those modules could each have different delivery strategies. So it's modular and stackable and flexible.
That's right.
Right?
Right, and so some of them are on demand on a platform that we bespoke are building for these students. Some of them are live in Spark Labs across these 16 districts with a really engaged, encouraging lab leader to help them stick to it when they struggle. And also they're bringing in experts from the field so that you can get someone from Dell Technologies to talk to you about AI, or you can get someone from Apple to talk to you about app building. And so we are partnering with higher ed, with industry experts, and with these 16 districts to create this truly student interest and agency-driven experience. All of the activities that they do are real-world relevant. So instead of taking a quiz and writing an essay, they might be developing a podcast, writing a letter to their legislator to request new approaches to, AI management, or promoting business in rural industry. We're really excited about our game development pathway, which is a collaboration with Epic Games, which is in North Carolina. You may have heard of Fortnite. And UNCG, which has a really, UNCG is in Greensboro, a really robust esports and esports management career pathway. So kids who are really into gaming can see themselves as game developers, designers, esports event managers, and all sorts of things. So what we're hoping is that kids in really rural communities, kids from communities that have no idea what a full stack engineer is, never heard of UX, UI, can find an easy on-ramp in a low-risk, high entertainment and engaging environment, and maybe change their sense of possible self and say, oh, I didn't think I was a tech person, but actually I'm really into data analytics, and I think I love these new data visualization opportunities. I want to build my own AI models and apply them to problems that I see in my community. So we're really focused on equitable, low-risk pathways. The initial program we're doing this year is a pass, no-fail credit, high school credit opportunity. So they choose their own adventure, they stack their experiences. If they don't get 8, it's not a risk to them. So we're hoping more kids
that reduces
will
the risk
try.
of trying, right?
Yeah.
If you could try it and then you could decide.
I do want to take that cybersecurity course, or I do
Yeah,
want to do that
yeah.
community college class. That's right.
Anybody else doing the esports pathway? Where are you?
My name's Tony. I literally just graduated high school 2 weeks ago.
My school,
Where'd you graduate?
I graduated from Arabia Mountain High School. We have a pathway system like what y'all are talking to, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is exactly target audience. I graduated from the computer science and engineering pathway from a rural school down in the mountains. We do like a lot of environmental stuff, and we have an esports pathway. With it, we have to take like credentials classes every year, 3 years of it. After you finish taking the 3 years, you have to take a test called the NOCD. It goes over all 3 years of learning. You get a credential. Once you pass it, you can get college courses for it, college credit. You can apply it to your transcript. You can apply it to your diploma as a pathway seal. It's just very amazing how you're actually growing into like.
Did you compete after school as well, like on a team?
We have CTSOs, Career Technical Student Organizations. My CTSO was TSA, Technology Student Association. With that, we'd have conferences every season. Like we'd have our fall leadership conference, we'd have our state conference. During those conferences, they would have different competitions where you can compete. It's not even competing against.
Come up here and go.
We have an extra seat.
We need more from you. We need more from you soon. That's so cool. Rob, how was?
Program, and I was like, I am the target audience. I love to see.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Thank you.
My name is Tony. I'm here from the Ambassadors Program. The whole reason I'm even up here is because of opportunities like this presented to kids and Gen Zers like myself. Just having the opportunity and access to be up here on this stage, to actually be a part of the conversation, I feel like it's amazing. There's a lot of conversations about higher education and K12 where we're on the table. We're like a dish. Everyone's around us feasting on us. But the second you can actually jump off the dinner plate and just like take a seat up here, it's wow. I'm so nervous.
Why don't you ask Rob what he's up to?
So, what are you up to?
I want to keep hearing more about what you're up to and where your high school is. It sounds amazing. So I work at Google. I'm the education lead on the Grow with Google team. So I don't know how many folks are familiar with the Google Career Certificates. Just a sense in the room. Okay. So like 60%, which is almost passing in K12 and education. But I actually started my career as a high school principal. I opened a small school in New York City with the Urban Assembly, and just double downs on Dana's point that Tom is connected to everything, because we were just talking about the Urban Assembly at the beginning here. But I was working on pathways in a school environment, helping students move into careers in emergency medicine. And then in the last 2 years, have gone to the Grow with Google team, where I'm coming from the employer perspective. And so on the Grow with Google team, we actually, in 2017, created an IT support certificate to internally upskill and reskill our employees and make sure that a much beloved service called TechStop could keep the company humming along. And it was so successful, we put the certificate onto the Coursera platform, and it quickly became the most popular certificate for gaining skills in information technology. And so we expanded the portfolio, which now includes 6 different fields, and really helps people move from into high growth, in demand jobs quickly. So in 3 to 6 months at about 10 hours per week. But what's been interesting about it, and we always think about the user, the person who's using our products, and more Gen Z these days, was that we had expected it to be primarily for adult learners. And when we looked at the data of who was actually using the certificates, 50% were adult learners, but also 50% of the folks either had degrees or were pursuing degrees. And so we decided to work with the American Council on Education to have them recommended for college credit so that they could be used by either high school students or folks pursuing a bachelor's or an associate's degree, so that it could allow them to move in and out of jobs and continue to upskill and reskill themselves through higher education. So I'm lucky enough that now I get to work with education institutions across the country. We have over 400 really exciting partnerships that are deploying the certificates in a variety of models. And I think some of the most exciting work that we're doing is with K12 connecting to higher ed as an opportunity for students to learn in-demand skills, but then also apply it towards a degree.
I brought this for that. Well, this is such an interesting time, Rob. It feels like we talked about this in an ASA-sponsored publication called Unbundled Learning. YouTube is probably the most important learning platform in the world now, right?
Yes, I think it's 98% of our users, which is billions of users, come to YouTube to learn something.
Right, and so it's very interesting that the whole Grow with Google is such an interesting set of inside-outside resources. They're used in school, but also out of school. It's just a very different way for us to think about how we develop professionally, right?
Yeah, and actually, we just launched a YouTube channel for the Google Career Certificates last year. So you can check out all of our content is on there. The assessments are not on there, but you can go and learn how to become a data analyst on our YouTube channel.
Did you use any of the Google resources?
I don't remember the exact one because it was kind of built into my coursework and curriculum. So yeah.
Speaking of built into coursework and curriculum, what's going on with Gen AI? Are you beginning to pull that into Workspace and into Grow with Google?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a conference without a conversation about artificial intelligence.
Right, we have to go there.
I don't work super closely with Gen AI, but we are doing a few things with artificial intelligence. Google has been an AI-first company for many years now. So I think some exciting things that I use on a day-to-day and that are available now in Workspace, so Docs, Gmail, are the ability, it's always tough to stare at a blank page. Yes. The prompt there can help you generate some ideas. And actually, I was at a breakfast this morning and had to make some opening remarks that had to fit into 5 minutes. And so when I drafted out my bullet points, I was able to highlight it and ask Gen AI to estimate how long that would take. So there are some really cool productivity features that we're doing that learners are increasingly using because our Google for Education is connected to a Workspace.
Are they going to pull BARD into that? Is there going to be an option, like an opt-in, opt-out for an institution? How's that going to work, do you know?
I'm not sure about that. I do know that BARD is powering some of our Gen AI and Workspace. But in my work directly, we are doing some interesting things too. So last year we launched a tool that we call Interview Warmup. And what it allows someone to do who completes our certificate is in a short session, actually engage with this AI-driven tool to practice interviewing.
Yeah.
So it asks you content-specific questions, it transcribes what you've said to it, and then it gives you feedback in real time.
Yeah.
So it'll say how many times you said any positive statements, or any notes to skills that you've sort of learned in your experience and that would apply to the job.
Were you a Google school or did you use that other company?
I was a Google school.
Did you, this spring, did you try BARD or ChatGPT?
No.
How many of your assignments did you use, How many of your assignments did you use Gen AI?
I would say most of my writing assignments I liked. I may have, but I didn't use it in that
You have friends
section.
that use generative AI?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm from the engineering school, we're not word-based, so when they were like, oh, create an essay on this, everyone's like, okay, let me just feed this over here.
So how does generative AI make you think differently about what college is gonna be like? Are you gonna use it every day?
I feel like it should be a tool to help us, instead of using it to like turn in assignments itself. I feel like you should use like generative AI to like create a base work and then transform it from there. Like, oh, this paragraph, I like what they said here. I'm gonna use my research, my
Is that how
things that
all
they
did
taught.
all your teachers feel that way?
Not really.
Amy, what do we do? And, Office of Ed Tech just released some guidance about 3 weeks ago.
They did.
What do we do with this generative AI thing? How does it change the way you think about pathways at all?
You know, it's interesting. I've probably talked more about AI in the past 2 months than I have in the past 20 years. Is that true for everyone in this room?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. We did release some guidance on our principles from the Department of Education with respect to thinking about, approaching AI with curiosity and integrating it into classrooms and using it as a powerful tool for learning and being mindful of, protecting our students and data and, just making sure that we've got some guardrails in place. But the way that the analogy that we're using is an electric bicycle, right? You're still riding the bike, you're still driving it, directing it where it goes, but you're gonna go further and you're gonna go faster. And that's what AI can do for us as humans. It can free up our minds and our potential to go in new directions, to go farther and faster in those directions. And I feel like we're approaching this from lots of different stances in the field, but I hope that we approach this with the spirit of, if my teacher gives me an assignment that I can generate through AI a response to, that may not be the most high order assignment for me to actually engage in. Like, how can we have more of the project-based learning, interdisciplinary learning, connected to your peers and to your community learning, so that the assignments are relevant?
I have one idea.
Oh yeah?
Steve, stand up. Steve's a friend of ours from Da Vinci High Schools. It's in LA, just south of LAX, and you and your pals built this really cool co-authoring tool on top of the other generative AI tool. What was the purpose? To do more client-connected projects?
Yeah, so we're calling it Project Leo, and basically we're trying to give students the opportunity to take what they're passionate about, their interests, and align it with the skills that they need. And so we take those 2 inputs, we pass along to ChatGPT, and we generate personalized projects. And then as students are working on those projects, we're using our professional network. This is what I'd love to talk with Jason a little bit more about. We're using our professional network for professionals to give feedback on those project posts. And so the students are building their professional network while they're doing classwork, and they're meeting all the school requirements while also doing a career-connected project. And ChatGPT does an amazing job generating personalized projects. So we have over 1,000 generated in a couple weeks. And student feedback is off the charts. Like, wow, this is an amazing application of these skills that seem boring to me. So it's already getting really good feedback.
So Nancy, I think this is sort of next-gen work-based learning. This is interesting. It's dynamic, it's agentic, it's project-based. It brings employers in, but isn't too much of a burden. Anyway, it's very cool. You can learn more about it if you Google Project Leo.
ProjectLeo.net.
There's a very cool landing page.
Hey, one more quick thing on this
Yeah.
though. I really appreciate the role that ChatGPT or AI can play in the workplace as well. So not only in classrooms, but in the world of work.
Yeah.
I'm hardwired to be hopeful and optimistic. I'm hopeful and optimistic that this can help strengthen people who have not had access to middle class opportunities,
Yeah.
strengthen their on-ramps into it. There was research from MIT a few weeks ago about ChatGPT providing a 37% increase in productivity, but especially for adults who were, experiencing lower levels of literacy, had the greatest returns in productivity and ability to engage and advance in their careers. And so I'm hopeful that this is a way for us to reimagine how people can fulfill their endless potential.
Yeah. Dana, I just love the way that you're supporting districts to think really hard about quickly standing up these new pathways. What else can you tell us about how you're supporting them? And are you seeing a lot of interest in Gen AI and related pathways?
We absolutely are. So in addition to students learning how to do applied AI and how to become prompt engineers, we have a creative writing and generative AI unit where they can learn to use it as a starting point but not lose their own voice in the process. So, we have ethics units on how to ethically use AI. So we have that. But we also thinking about, work-related experiences We partnered with an organization called District C to bring teamship experiences, so groups of young people who work with a real company with a real world problem to generate and then pitch solutions. So this is going to be offered.
Put a big underscore into that. That's a big idea, the idea of teamship. We had dinner with NAF, NAF.org, National Career Academy group that has, in addition to being a leader in internships, they are now doing teamships. So it's a big idea that it's sort of a combination of project-based learning and internship, and it includes kids, and we think it's really a big deal.
It's really exciting, and it builds those mentorships and connections and networks that we know are transformational for kids who come from disconnected communities who don't have ways into these careers.
And especially if you're in a rural environment where you can't go across the street to high-tech.com.
That's right. But we can only bring this experience, which is high touch and lots of relationship building, to a couple of hundred kids in the next year. So in order to leverage AI, we are partnering with District C and an organization called Ultisim that is creating simulated teamship experiences so that a student has chat experiences and avatars with a tech company, a coach and team of students, and they're all AI. And what's really cool is that we're not designing this in a vacuum, but the students themselves are testing it, they're giving feedback, they're saying this is what's lame, this is what was cool, I really liked this. And they're also in the process getting to see the guts of it, working with the AI company to say, how is it built? What did you do? How did you solve this problem? So it's a multi-layered experience, and it's very much student voice and student experience driven, so that we're not, designing something and expecting you all to like it.
That sounds amazing, honestly. Just being a part of that, to actually give the feedback into it while you're also learning real time. Like you're trying out the features here and then going into the back and saying, oh yeah, I don't really like how this AI was used. I don't really like how this AI, this avatar was created and the type of responses it was giving back to me. How can we fix this? Oh my God, I just love this conversation.
Hey, Jason's a national leader in learner records. As we think about exponential technologies and their role in pathways, we think in the second half of this decade, every high school kid and every college learner will have a learner record, and it will be used to collect transcripts, credentials, and other forms of evidence that will become the currency of learning. And I think Jason is probably the most important national leader on this topic. Tell us why learner records are important and what you guys are doing to try to build traction for how they'll be the foundation for learning in the future.
Yeah, so a lot of times at the Chamber, we often get questions about, how is technology going to change the world of work? And what I get really excited about on our foundation side is how technology is going to change the world of workforce development. And we think there's a huge upside opportunity for how we can integrate new and advanced technologies into how we deliver education and workforce development services. So one of the networks we are the steward of is a group called the T3 Innovation Network. It's a couple thousand professionals that are all working in collective action to facilitate this digital transformation of the talent marketplace. And a key part of that is the learner record piece, the learner and employment record. So we're trying to figure out how can somebody in a digital way accumulate all of their knowledge, skills, and abilities, whether self-attested or verified by other parties, but to have that at their fingerprints so they can organize resume presentations, better apply for jobs, but really have the sum total of their skills and experiences at their fingertips to use for continuing education and employment purposes. Now we're trying to build the data infrastructure to make that a reality, and artificial intelligence is part of the discussion. So we have a project right now in the T3 network that's sponsored by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where we're trying to now apply AI to translate someone's past and current education and employment experiences into a skills-based, standards-based record that they could then self-assert and use to compose like a resume. And why that's important is, as we talk about this LER world, in a lot of contexts, it's about issuing new credentials. So coming out of high school, coming out of college, it's getting a credential in a new way. But for someone like me, nobody's giving me anything anytime soon. So how is this going to be relevant to me and the entire incumbent workforce that's doing labor market transactions all the time? Well, we need something like AI to help us better describe the sum total of our skills and experiences, so that data is always working for us and we're empowered with that data. So we think this could be a powerful way. And if you look at the work that ASA has led and others in trying to say it's all about multiple pathways, co-curricular activities, this stuff matters. Well, we need a better way of transcribing those records around those experiences. We're leaving all of that learning on the table and then expecting the individual to go and summarize as best they can what those experiences were like, the skills that were attained, and to assert those things. We think this is a great way for technology to empower learners and workers to better describe the sum total of those experiences. This isn't science fiction. We're actually doing this demonstration next month in DC. And anyone who'd like to come to the chamber headquarters and be part of that, you're welcome to.
Amy, where do you see learning record leadership emerging? Are states going to play an important role here?
States absolutely play an important role in data, period. And our data systems in states, we've been working at statewide longitudinal data systems for a really long time. They're still really difficult. They still don't connect the data that we need between K12, post-secondary, and the full array of post-secondary, pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship, industry credentials, 2-year degrees, beyond, and then the world of work, what actually happens to people in the labor market. I'm excited to learn more from Jason about what they're doing in LERs, because this is a really critical way for people to be able to broker their skills. And I'm also thinking about it from a lens on equity. I'm thinking about how young women may describe their experiences differently than young men do, even though they have the same experience. How can we calibrate on what these experiences are in our classrooms in the world of work and ensure that our students are really owning the power of their knowledge and their experiences and the creativity that they can bring to workplaces in inconsistent ways that really give them the ability to make choices.
Rob, are you guys bullish on credentials? How do you feel about credentials and learner records? Are those going to be the currency of learning in the future?
I think we think of it as a both end, right? Like we are still obviously hiring for degrees, but one of the more pieces of exciting work that we're doing is
I don't think anybody was allowed to say that at this conference.
Obviously degrees are part of it, but like.
You want to put that differently?
So, that's not so. I think one of the more pieces of exciting work that we're doing is not just on the credential design and delivery part, but on working with employers to start changing the conversation about how we're hiring around skills.
Right.
And so we have an employer consortium of 150 leading employer partners, Google included, who will consider the Google Career Certificates as a hiring qualification for aligned entry-level roles. And so we will hire folks with a Google Career Certificate, as will folks in our employer consortium, and that's a growing space that we are really investing a lot in.
Speaking of learner records, and pathways, what's next on your pathway? What's next on your learner record?
Well, tomorrow actually, I'm going down to Howard University in DC. I'm starting my summer session. I'm going to be majoring in computer engineering, full ride to PhD with the CarSTEM Scholars Program.
We need another fellow. Would you like to be a Gibbs fellow as well?
Talk to me, please. I was gonna come up here after the end of the talk session to speak to everyone. I'm so glad to be up here.
You are living what we are hoping to create for all young people.
And it works. I'm telling you, it works. My school, it's private. Oh, it's not private. It's public, but it's a school of choice. You have to, sorry if y'all can't hear me. It's public, but it's a school of choice. So you have to apply through it with the lottery. Once you apply through it with the lottery, you have to choose one pathway that you would like to start on. We give you multiple options to transfer within your high school career, but it's 3 years. If you want to complete the pathway, it's recommended that you start 9th grade, finish 11th, or 10th, finish 12th. You do also have the opportunity to take classes through our partnership high school with OEC, so you can still finish the pathway. But it works. You get the credentials, you get the certifications, you get the experience and exposure necessary to actually be a competing force in the workforce. Yeah.
That was amazing. We're going to finish with a little formative feedback. So your favorite guest by show of applause. How many of you enjoyed Rob? Amy, Jason, Tommy. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. See, come back after lunch for Corey and more pathways.